check it. All the orders came through from eBay. We've got a front and rear aluminum skid plate, everything we need to rebuild the carb, and those bumpers since they were missing or pretty much destroyed looking. Everything that we need to start the process of the rebuild, especially that guy right there, and everything that we're up against. And that's kind of where we're at with the T-Maxx as it sits now. So anybody who's made it this far, I really appreciate you guys. Let's get into it. See this? This is supposed to be a rubberized dust boot. You can pretty much see how much flex is left in that. So quite obviously that's going to need to be replaced. I tried to get the carb to slide. The carb will not slide, just like the motor would not turn. Oh, what do you know? There we go. Now that we broke that boot, it looks like we're getting somewhere on this. But still, the carburetor is going to have to be disassembled because, dude, look at this. So now we got an inside of the carburetor that's a perfect match for the way the engine used to look. This is what you're dealing with inside here and all over the outside of it. I can see that this return spring is just covered in rust right there. So this is going to take a lot of work. You know, you take this off, you take the seals off. There's exploded diagrams of these and how to take it apart. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. Check it out. We've got everything laid out for the carb rebuild. There's the engine just for a frame of reference. The carb body is set right there, and everything that goes in it is kind of laid out in the order that it would appear. Right over here, we have our carb seals, and that right there, those two brass bits that you see, those are included in the carb seal kit. Those are tools to help you work the new O-rings over the top of the carbs, and that's going to be helpful for our high-speed needle, low-speed needle, all those little O-rings that it incorporates. This right here is the literature that it was included, and you can have a look at that, pause it if you like, whatever. But let's get started on this carb situation. So the first thing we're going to do is have a look in here. You can see that there's an old seal still in place. Now I have this pick set that I got at Harbor Freight. Just cost a few dollars. They're pretty rad. We need to get into there and get something out. See, this would have been on the carburetor body, but it got stuck into the engine's mill. So we're going to go ahead and pull that, and oh, it flew across the room. My bad. But I could see right away that that wasn't exactly what you would call a good seal or something that would promote one. We dig around in there a little bit, and there's some crap in there. So before we install this, I'm going to have to clean that out. Now we get onto the carburetor. For starters, we can put this one on. Right? So let's kind of work from the carburetor body outward. So we'll put this seal on the carburetor body. We'll lubricate this seal with this stuff. I've always found that this stuff is like really awesome. I think Associated made this, but it's really awesome so far as like getting the seal to stay in place and to keep a good seal. You don't want to use RTV or anything that's too permanent. I think this is probably some kind of derivative of silicone oil. We'll put a little bit of that around there. Spread it around. Not too much. Don't want to go crazy on the lube if you guys remember what happened with the transmission situation. Set that to the side. Now the motor is going to need this seal to go down inside of the carburetor receiver on the motor. You guys remember that. So I'm going to put that there because I still have to clean that out. This is an ambidextrous carburetor body. So you have it this way, you could have it that way, you could have it any way you want. One of these is going to have the high-speed needle assembly installed into it, and the other one basically has a jam screw. So that's the side that you won't be using. And that's the side that we're about to address. Man, it's really hard to pick these up. I just like to do a little squirt, just like that, and kind of work it into the seal with your fingers. It'll get your fingers really greasy. You can wash your hands if you have to, because maybe it'll start to interfere with your dexterity, but whatever. Go ahead and scosh that up to the top of there. Get your wrench that you need, which in this case it looks like it's a 2.5 millimeter. So we'll go ahead and get that one out and screw this one in. Now let's move our way over to the high-speed needle assembly. I guess it's as good a place to keep going. The kit also included these washers, so I'm just going to take the high-speed needle sleeve, stick that on there. This is a banjo fitting, so you can see that little hole right there. That's where your fuel is going to be coming into. There's your next washer right there. And that's pretty much the assembly as it's going to be put onto the motor. So, screw that one in. Orient this so you can kind of get an idea like which way the fuel is going to be coming in. To start with, I guess that's pretty good. There's no way of telling where these holes are going to line up, and it doesn't really matter because the banjo fitting is going to fuel soak everything anyway, so you're pretty much good to go on that one. And just for the sake of what I got laying around, we'll use this pliers here. It's not too bad. And screw that in. And like I mentioned previously, you don't want to go too tight because you could end up damaging the carburetor body. Now that'll hold in place. Now we got our pick and try to remove the old O-ring. Don't be like me and poke yourself in the hand with an X-Acto knife or whatever silly stuff you got going on. Speaking of X-Acto knives and having them way too close to your fingers, it looks like that's how this is going to need to be addressed. So we got that off. Okay. Now the new one is going to be right here, and we have a tool, it just so happens, that fits right over those threads. It's brass, so it won't mess up your threads, which is pretty cool thinking, but it's still metal, so it's nice and rigid. We'll take this guy here, again, put a little bit of that green slime on there, just a little, work it around. That bottle, that little green slime tube here has lasted me for years, so you really don't need much, but it sure helps when you need it. Slide it up over the top of that tool you got, and it goes right into place. Now we're ready to install our high-speed needle. So what I'm going to do for the sake of this exercise, get it to seat. And we're all lubed up in there, so you don't have to worry about ripping seals or nothing like that, since we got the green slime and it's all new seals. Now we're all the way in, and I'm going to do it to factory tune, which, if I remember correctly, is 1/2, 1/2, 2/2, 3/2, 4. So we are 4 turns out, which is going to be pretty rich, but hopefully it'll work for us. Next thing we got on the lineup here, let's just go ahead and cap this end off. And again, that's 2.5 millimeters you're going to need for that one. So it's the same thing as the last jam screw was. While we're at it, how about a little bit of this 3-in-1 oil to lube this up. Oh, Jesus. My bad on that one. Unscrewed the wrong part of the lid. Get a little bit of that on there. Install it onto the actual slide assembly. It really is not enthusiastic about going on to either. I knew when I took this off that this was probably going to be a pain in the ass. And do keep in mind this is the original return spring that was installed in the truck, so it's also definitely seen better days. There we go. So we got that on here. Now let's go ahead and go back to this, line it up. Go ahead and we'll set this to the side for a second. Now we got to address this. So this is the idle set screw, and it has its own seal. I'm going to cut the seal off the idle set screw. And that is just hard as a rock. It is a really good thing that we're doing these. They would not have held up. We'll put our little tool on here. So it has another tool included with the kit that you're going to be able to use. So you got that there. And then we get our little O-ring that goes on this one. A little bit of that green slime action, just like before. I shouldn't need too much because there's already so much on my fingers. And then slide that up. And that should go right onto this assembly. Work it in there a little bit, and there you go. Now, since we got this notch lined up, we're back to the carb body and everything that goes with it. Since we got this notch lined up, let's just go ahead and slip this in here. We got our blade screwdriver. And I want to work this in until I have about a 1 to 2 millimeter gap in the throttle. So I know it's kind of hard to see in there, but we're going to be right about here. And now you'll notice the carb, the slide doesn't pull out of the carb anymore. So now we're going to try to get the spring back on the carburetor. Pull that guy down with a pick or a very fine screwdriver or whatever you got. So I pulled this guy down and got it in there. Now you want to just work it kind of all the way around. And it snapped in. So now our return spring is working. And once all that stuff is done, we're going to put this guy on there. That's our carburetor boot. This is just to keep dust and everything out of there. It's important. That's why I ordered all this stuff, is because the old one was destroyed. Just from age and abuse. Use, I guess you could say. Especially for a T-Maxx. T-Maxxes are a road hard, put away wet kind of a car. Nobody was all that careful with them, and rightfully so. I mean, it has to be the most produced nitro car in existence. The T-Maxx was just, there's no words for how many of them they produced. Just keep going on this, kind of working in there. I don't want to use tools on this because I don't want to rip the rubber, but we got it. So there we go. I'm going to dry this off on the end so there's not too much lubrication on it. Just kind of turn that in there. Then throw this on there. The way it goes on the motor is going to be something like this. If I remember correctly, this was like straight up and down for the most part. And once you install the motor, you're not going to be able to adjust this. So if we have to adjust this, we can do it later. Just kind of mock it up. It's a 1.5 millimeter. So let's get it. You want to go like relatively tight on it. So there we go. There's that, looking pretty good. Now the last thing that we have to contend with is the low speed needle. The low speed needle is pretty much going to be set flush to the face of the slide. And I'm expecting this to be very much like what we saw the last time. But I'm going to get into this, and all I'm doing is picking at this with the X-Acto, trying to get the carb seals out of here so that they can be replaced. And there you can see that they're just absolutely trashed. There's little pieces of them coming off of my fingers. So these definitely had to be replaced. It was the right idea to wait and to be patient and buy the replacement parts for these carburetor seals. So because these were just so bad, I'm going to take my pick here and just run the pick through here. Make sure we get everything out of there that we can. Dust off the all hands, wipe this guy off, and then we got this tool here. Let's take our seals. I'm going to put a little bit of lube on my finger. These seals are like incredibly small. Just going to pick them up with this guy, get them lubed up a little bit, slide them both onto this kind of spike that we have they go on. The nice thing about these tools is once you have these, you can order these seals and everything. They're regular size O-rings. Okay, so now we got to use this guy. Kind of sneak the seals up into where they're supposed to go, right? So that one goes on. This one, I figured it'd be easier to just kind of drag this one over the top of it. We'll see how that works. Hopefully well, because I don't have any extras. So we've got that one over the top of the other seal. Do your little rotation, and there's that. So like I said before, this is going to go right into here. And get our blade screwdriver. Keep on going until you are just about flush with the face of that slide. Now we have a rebuilt, hopefully working little carburetor there for our motor. Oh, I almost forgot. We're also going to want to degunk this little groove down inside here, and it was so bad from the way that it had been left last time. So I got this pick here. I'm just going to go ahead and degunk this. And you can see how badly it needed it. It's crusty, just like the motor was before we rebuilt it, because that seal was hiding all that stuff. You can see what's coming off of there not looking so good. So what I'm going to do is, since we already have our seal here, we'll leave that. And this seal right here is going to go into the motor once I scrape this little receiver portion out and get it ready to receive it. Now you can see here that we're pretty well cleaned out. That old seal was pretty ripped up, but I'm not seeing too much going on down in here so far as anything goes. So this is your 13 millimeter, the big one, is going to go down in here, and you got to work it into that notch. I'm going to do my best to do this while at the same time kind of trying to keep you guys into the loop about how it goes down. This one should work pretty good. So there's a groove down inside the assembly that I want to put this into. Just kind of work it in a little at a time. It's a circle, so you just get one spot where you want it and work the rest of it in. And even though it can be frustrating, you just got to keep going on her. If it goes too deep, just drag it back up. This part wants to pop up and be a pill. Just keep going. And going, and going. Am I right, folks? And there we go. I did have to get a little down and dirty with that one, but it ended up working. The new seal is in place. So we go ahead and put our carb back in place. Slid in there right past the seal just like it should. Line it up so that it's straight. Just about there. And then our old trusty 5.5 mil. Go on in there and tighten the carb back up. Give it a check, make sure it doesn't move, make sure it doesn't slide, nothing like that. Well, of course it's supposed to slide, but you know what I mean. And there you have it. The motor and the carb are serviced and rebuilt from absolutely trash conditions. So we'll see how that runs.